welcome to the Museum of Cornish Life down here in Helston. My name's Margaret and I'm one of the volunteers at the museum. A few months ago, two volunteers and myself were sorting through an exhibition that needed a little bit of upgrading, and we found these vacuum cleaners and items that are used in sweeping, and we're sort of saying, it's a shame that these aren't more on display and that people don't see them more. Unfortunately, our director was standing behind us and she said, well, why don't you have an exhibition? We thought that was a great idea until we realised that we were the people putting together the exhibition. However, that's what we've done and that's what we're going to talk about today. If we start really with the history of sweeping, which sounds terribly boring, but actually it's quite fascinating. We probably think of the earliest form of broom, or to use the Old English word, the besom, which we often associate with the mythology of witches flying on the brooms. And this was very much promoted by a text in the 14th century, which said that virtuous women very much stayed at home, looked after the house and did as they were told. But non-virtuous women, and they were really making a dig at a particular sect in France at that time, who allowed women to conduct what we would think of as church services. Those women flew around on brooms, and they were really the prototype, if you like, of what we became to think of as witches. So the idea of witches on brooms sort of came out of a text which was a bit anti-women, really. But moving on, as for many, many years, brooms and brushes tended to be the way that we cleaned the houses, but also carpets. Now, the carpet beater came in, which you can see various at the moment, and these were like large fly swatters, really, where usually the maids or the servants had to remove the carpets or rugs from the house, take them outside, maybe hang them over the washing line and beat them with either a wicker or a wire-based carpet beater to get rid of all the dirt and the dander and whatever might have been secreted in the carpets. And that went on for many years. So we tended to be using a mixture of carpet beaters, brooms and brushes. Now, we're all familiar with a brush, but we found one in the museum that we're actually not terribly sure what it is. We've looked up where it was made, which was in Norfolk, but we couldn't find anything that actually indicated what this particular brush was used for. So if anybody's got any ideas, please let us know, because we're really, really interested to find out. The idea of a more mechanical way of cleaning your carpets came in late 19th, early 20th century. And many people will be familiar with the Eubank, which had a similar product in America made by Bissell, but it was a non-electric carpet cleaner that you just sort of move up and down the floor and it collects the grime in the brushes, and indeed it's still produced today. And it brought out the term Eubanking. People would Eubank their carpets. We then moved on to other forms of early vacuum cleaners, but they're not electric vacuum cleaners, such as the Baby Daisy and the Dustor, which tended to operate using bellows, which were hidden within the item itself. And sometimes it would take two people to operate these non-electric appliances, one to actually operate the bellows and the other one to use the tube which would suck up the dirt. As we move on, we can see the Star vacuum cleaner, which had the remarkable claim that it could not get out of order. I think the one that we have now probably is out of order, but it is probably over 100 years old. In the cabinet, we have a number of advertisements for different types of vacuum cleaners. Often they illustrated that it was the woman doing the vacuum cleaning, and sometimes the man was sitting in the chair very generously raising his feet as she vacuumed under them. Whether that's quite the way it is nowadays, I'll leave that to you to debate. Moving on now to the electrical appliances, we have an unusual one here, and again we're looking for help with this one, called the Dyser. All that we could find out about this was that there was a Mr. Dyser who was connected with the Hoover Company in Great Britain, but we don't really know anything about the Dyser itself. So again, any information that you can give to us would be very, very gratefully received. As we move on, we become moving on to the more familiar vacuum cleaners, the Hoovers and the Electrolux, and we have a display of these within the museum. These haven't changed greatly, I suppose, over the years. They're electric driven. The models perhaps have become smaller, more efficient, but basically the same principles. But as you can see from the different prices illustrated, the price to buy one of them nowadays is considerably more than £33, or I think we have one that said it was £10 something to buy new. And just to remind ladies that if you are being challenged to do the vacuuming, just remember that nature abhors a vacuum, and so do I. And the last little illustration here is about Hubert Booth, who invented the first British vacuum cleaner, which is very, very different from what we see nowadays. This was a huge item that travelled the streets, mainly the streets of London where the wealthy lived. It looked to many, in many respects, like a fire engine, and in fact it was driven by liveried operatives who brought this along. It created vast interest from the neighbours, so it's a really good marketing ploy, and the actual hoovering bit would go through the windows into the house, and very often the lady of the house would have invited her friends round for a vacuum cleaning tea party. So they would sit there drinking tea, eating cakes, whilst the various liveried operatives, which I think was very important, came and swept under their dainty feet. So you can find out more about Puffing Billy, which was the name given to the British vacuum cleaner, and the other items which we've mentioned if you come to visit us at the Museum of Cornish Life. Thank you.